Welcome, welcome. So we're getting started at the top of the hour. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure we're going to have people streaming in. We're all busy folks. It's a Friday. Even though most of our semesters are over, I mean, you have to like get your vacations in. So I really appreciate that you guys are here with us today. My name is Nathan David, and I'll be introducing my co-presenters in the near future. But before I do that, I wanted to share some housekeeping. You've probably been to a StuKent webinar before or used the Demio platform. On the right-hand side, you're going to see a chat function. So within that chat function, that's how you reach out to us. That's how you ask questions throughout. Right now, I want everybody to take a moment, put into the chat three things. So these three things: your name, the school that you teach at, or the company that you do training at, and then your best estimate to each year how many students you teach Google Analytics to. So your best estimate. Ballpark for me, so my name's Nathan David. I teach at Baldwin Wallace University, and each year I think I teach around 150 students about Google Analytics because I incorporate assignments for Google Analytics almost into every single one of my marketing classes. So love to hear your thoughts, what your number is. If it's zero, you're in the right spot. We're here to give you resources. We're here to help you teach not only Google Analytics, but the new version of Google Analytics, Google Analytics 4. So I'm excited to hear from you. Okay, we have some people, you're showing off with some of those numbers. Love it. I love that people are teaching Google Analytics. I think it's so important. As someone from industry, I'm sure Sabrina and Uriah will chime in. This is something that people use all the time. I'm so glad that we have all of you here with us today. I'm so glad that you're actively teaching it. And then, as I mentioned, if you're not, if you're at zero, we're going to give you some resources through this webinar where you can get to wherever you want to be so you can expose students to this highly used digital marketing tool. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Looks like we have people from all over, a lot of academics. I know also we have some industry folks joining us as well. And so you might be doing trainings and training people at your company, or like Bounteous, training other companies on how to use these platforms. So thank you for joining us. And I think the highest amount of students that someone listed was 150. So if I'm going back up, who had 150? Victoria. So Portsmouth University in the UK, 150 students. Wow. So if you switch from Google Analytics to Google Analytics 4, that's going to make a huge impact. I'm looking forward to working with you, but everybody else who's making a difference and helping these students get this real life experience and skills that they can use to ultimately get jobs. Before I jump into the GA4 content, I did want to provide a quick reminder. The next major thing happening and coming from StuKent is ProfCon. So ProfCon 2022 is something that I highly recommend that you attend. They're anticipating that there's going to be over 2,000 educators at this conference, over 30 speakers talking about different topics like cutting edge things like Google Analytics 4. And so it starts on June 15th, and then it's a 3-day virtual conference. And so really no risk, no cost on your half. And so hopefully you're able to join for free and connect with fellow educators that way, just like you're connecting with us today through this webinar. So the great people at StuKent just shared that link with you, so you can reserve your spot there. Feel free to click through on that link that should have popped up on your screen. So now that we have that out of the way, let's get into the matter at hand, transitioning to Google Analytics 4, Instructor Survival Guide. Where did this webinar come from? Well, a seed was planted when Google scared the living daylights out of all of us. I think it was a month ago that they sent an email to everyone who has a Google Analytics account, and they said Google Analytics is going away on July 1st, 2023. So when I read that, I was like, we need to take action right now. We need to make sure that we're ahead of this deadline so our students have the resources that they need and that they're using the most up-to-date version of Google Analytics before we hit that deadline and we're teaching something that's then obsolete. And so that was the catalyst. I wanted to do research. I wanted to learn more about it. And I figured if I'm going to reach out, connect with experts, why not share that with all of you? Hence me bringing Sabrina and Uriah from Bounteous. I worked with Bounteous previously, and they did consulting when I worked at Cleveland Clinic. And so they are experts in Google products, Google platforms, especially Google Analytics. They helped us implement our Google Analytics 360 account, which is the paid version of Google Analytics that has a lot more complex features and a lot of different things you can layer in. So I'm really excited for you to hear from them today and for them to share some of their insights from the front line of industry, as the industry, just like us in academics, goes through and tries to transition and switch to this new platform. So with that said, a little about myself. If you don't know me, I specialize in digital marketing strategy as well as analytics, and hence me writing a textbook for Stu Kent called Digital Marketing Analytics and Strategic Decision Making. It's all about using data to make strategic decisions, be smart about how you're making decisions and how you're being data driven at your organization. I also design curriculum outside of my textbook. I'm a speaker at events like this, and I still consult through my consultancy, Meta Impact. So it looks like Sabrina's with us. She just rejoined. If you could give a quick intro of your.
Definitely. So hello, my name is Sabrina Tatalius. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'm also an analytics consultant at Bounteous. I actually got started there when I was in college recently as an intern, and since then I've been there about 2 years now as a consultant. So love being there. I work daily within the Google Marketing Platform Suite with Google Analytics, especially GA4 now, Data Studio, Tag Manager, and some other products as well from the suite. Outside of that, within the company, I also do public trainings where about once a month we do different trainings on Google products. So I specifically use Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, and now GA4 is what we're transitioning to for those trainings as well, where we do workshops in different trainings, teaching people on the interface and platform for their organization. I also create blog content for the organization as well on our website related to analytics and GA4. Some of my favorites within the organization and just what I've been learning so far is within data visualization. I love making a good dashboard. I love learning about digital marketing and digital strategy as well, and how I could use that for organizations. So definitely excited to be here today. And I'm going to pass it over to Uriah as well.
Hi, I'm Uriah Collins. I'm based out of, actually based in Montreal, Canada. Fairly new to Bounteous, but I've been in the digital space for a long time. And just over time, I've sort of really come to really enjoy analytics. And I got into analytics mostly through working with Tag Manager. At Bounteous, currently, I'm a senior Google Analytics engineer. So I work with Sabrina a lot, and I support sort of a lot of the hands-on work, the implementation, working with clients to try to understand some of their needs and how those needs can be met in terms of getting that on their sites and getting things tracked. So that's what I'm doing at Bounteous, and a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you so much, Uriah. Okay, can you hear me now? I think I popped off for a second, but thank you so much. We're going to dive into the content, get into the specifics. Let's start with the deadline. The deadline is the catalyst for this conversation today. Without deadlines, nothing would happen, right? If you don't give me a deadline, I will keep procrastinating. And so Google gave us a deadline. The deadline is July 1st, 2023. And so we have just over a year to transition all the content that we're teaching in our courses from Google Analytics to Google Analytics 4. And so this is important because Google Analytics will stop functioning. The universal old version of Google Analytics will stop functioning after this date. And so we'll need to move to that new version of Google Analytics, the new standard Google Analytics 4. And we're going to talk about what's great about this transition, why we should be, excited versus just upset and disgruntled that we have to learn a new platform. And as a warning, as your students probably provide anecdotal stories on all the time, deadlines are closer than they appear. I'm sure the night before, just like me, you get emails from students saying, I do not understand the instructions for the first part of this paper that is due tomorrow at noon. And so we get that all the time. We don't want to be like that. We want to be ahead of this. Personally, my goal is by the beginning of 2023 to not have any content in any of my courses that talks about Google Analytics. Everything will be switched over to Google Analytics 4. So we're going to provide information at a high level about Google Analytics 4 so you can talk about the theory and the structure and the advantages of it. And then at the end, I have a very specific handout that I'm going to provide to all of you that gives you actionable things that you can do as an instructor, specifically resources to build Google Analytics 4 into your courses, work that I've already done to create assignments, to create lesson plans, to create videos. And so we'll be sharing that with you at the end. But first, I'm going to pass it over to Uriah, who's going to talk about how Google Analytics is transitioning and why that is happening.
Hi, I hope everyone can hear me. Yes, so the big question right now is why is Google transitioning to GA4? So Google, why are they transitioning? Google Analytics is used by 85.8% of all websites whose traffic analysis tool we know. This is 55.2% of all websites. So Google's used across, as you can see, globally and used by many different things, by many different companies in terms that Google Analytics, primarily it's a free tool, so its accessibility is there. One of the big drivers in this transitioning became COVID. As COVID really pushed people to go online and start using things, the measurement became different, and Google accelerated its adoption of app versus app plus web as it pushed towards a more consolidated version of its tracking tool. Acknowledgement. This isn't about being a product advocate, it's about being a data advocate. The next generation of Google Analytics. The new Google Analytics is built for the future of analytics, providing solutions to the cookieless challenges, holistic measurement, and advanced analysis. The most important thing to take away here is, as we go forward, is the deprecation of third-party cookies. And that becomes critical because you have platforms like Apple's platform or even Chrome that's trying to deprecate the third-party cookie. So Google needs to get advertisers and businesses to focus on building and working around that first-party cookie, their own data, how to manage that data. And Google Analytics 4 is built to support that in places where Google Analytics, the old UA, didn't support it. So in dealing with that, one of the things that happens in the old UA, it was everything was based on page views and things like bounce rates. In GA4, it's all about sessions. It's about events, and events matter. It's like, what is someone doing? What are they clicking on? What was that journey? And GA4's goal is to tie that together, to stitch, to have a clear connection as people move between devices. So before, a lot of websites were very static and very simple. Now they're dynamic. You have one-page websites, you have apps. And so GA4 is addressing that by trying to merge everything. So you have one tracking platform. So again, another big factor in that transition is the rise of mobile. now everybody uses mobile continuously, and mobile is critical to everyday needs, and businesses are relying on data coming from mobile, and some of that mobile data now is augmenting web data, and with GA4 you're having that in one place. So you're using your what was used to be app plus web now is consolidated into GA4 using the Firebase integration. So the other thing about why it's changing is Google Analytics. The UA is quite old; it's about 9 years old, and its form, as I've said before, was page retracking, and that's pretty old and it's outdated, and it's not very relevant anymore. And people want to know how people are engaging websites and engaging mobile apps. And with the old UA, you could not work with mobile. You couldn't really figure out what was going on in a mobile app. With the new platform, you're able to unify those again. So gaps and risk with Universal Analytics. It's less durable. Universal Analytics was built before the privacy measures and user tracking limitations were on the roadmap. Less control. Before GA4, data deletion, data retention, granular control over compliance settings were not available. Fewer metrics with data points around observed data. Machine learning and predictive analytics are more valuable than ever than before. So one of the big things going forward with GA4 is the advent of machine learning and AI to fill in gaps, to allow you to someone would go on a website and information tracker was blocked. Google will try and fill those gaps in for you so that you are able to continue to rely on that data. Google GA4 versus analytics. What is Google Analytics for property? An entirely new version of Google Analytics that unites concepts from both Google Analytics primarily for websites and Google Analytics for Firebase. So this is merging. So before this was called App Plus Web, and App Plus Web, they were two different properties. Now they're merged into one. So you have both. So you can track, in that same instance, you can track your app and you can track your website. Why Firebase? Firebase is built on Google Analytics for Firebase or App Analytics to track analytics using the same data model as your apps to get all your data in one place. So again, it's data. The emphasis here is on data unification. Event-driven data model creates metrics that represents unified cross-platform behavior. So as a user moves from web to app, you want to be able to follow that user. You want to engage that user, and Firebase combined with Google Analytics allows you to do that. It allows you to track that, whether it's through user ID. You're able to see that full, complete user journey. Overview and benefits of GA4. Flexible and efficient. Faster and fully extensible event model for more granular and flexible insights analysis. Unsampled reporting for all. That there's a little caveat there. It's most of the reports, not all of the reports, but they let you know. Implementation ease. Measure meaningful interaction without any additional code, implementation, or complex configuration. So out of the box, GA4 will allow you to collect your base measurements, or they're called enhanced measurements, but you can start collecting certain events right away. Cross-platform, consistent metrics and dimensions for your integrated reporting across app and web like never before. So again, as I went before, you're able to have that unified view, ad hoc analysis, and improved data visualization for a deeper understanding of your users. So now you have a wide array of analysis that you can actually work with and actually push towards a tool like Google Data Studio and work with your data more. You have more options instead of sort of being in that old dashboard from UA, where it was sort of a little bit intimidating. Here now you can personalize and do a lot of things with it. Intelligent, machine learning capabilities that automatically surface insights and anomalies and predictions. As we know that one of the big things with when you're working with data is when things are going right, you're fine with it. It's when you're looking always sort of for the anomalies, the outliers, to sort of to speak to what you need to do next. And being event driven, GA4 helps you to really look at the basis of engagement, not sort of vanity metrics. And I'm going to pass it over to Sabrina now.
I just want to jump in quick because as instructors, as trainers, I think it's so important when we're conveying Google Analytics 4 to our students that we're not just showing them a tool and dropping them into it, but providing context to why is it structured the way it is. And I mean, my biggest takeaway from everything that I've learned from Bounteous, from everything that I've learned about GA4 in general, is that it is designed for where we are at now at this point in time, where Universal Analytics was designed for where we were at 9 years ago with page-based tracking on primarily just websites. Now, we can use GA4 to track our mobile app, to track our website, but also you can think about a lot of other things that aren't even a mobile app or a website, like a smartwatch application, applications for smart cars. Like there's so many different things that have, a interface that the user is interacting with that we would want to measure as businesses, as marketers. And so I think it's important to say to them, this is a new thing, but why is it new? Why was it created? Because it's better than what we had before. And it also can do a lot more and aligns with where we're at as marketers today versus where we were 9, 10 years ago.
I think that's super helpful to hit on that. I put in the chat a message, but just so you know, for GA4, you could totally just have a single website being tracked on there as well. But the whole push for it, as it was just said, is that you are able to connect different applications, which I think is a huge part as a student, especially if you're going to be integrating any kind of hands-on learning projects that are maybe working with small businesses, a nonprofit, through different course trainings. That's a good opportunity to, if you find an organization that has an app or a different application, to give them hands-on experience doing that learning experience and implementation as well as part of a project. That's a good learning opportunity. So thank you for hitting on that. Going deeper into some of the benefits within upgrading from legacy Google Analytics, Universal Analytics to Google Analytics 4 is, other than just implementation ease, the machine learning, is that we get a whole lot more. There's real-time data within BigQuery, which is essentially another data warehousing, data visualization tool that uses SQL code. That's something that courses might be using. There's tracking within app. So instead of before with the legacy using just web, now we're able to bring in those app and different application experiences all in one hub. This gives a huge holistic experience for when you're viewing user journeys and understanding user behavior, which is a huge plus. We also see more robust marketing audiences. So if you're teaching a class that's focused on more digital marketing as well, focusing more on like Google Ads, Search Console and more, that's gonna be super vital here because you get to integrate all those platforms, which you'll see in a few short slides, is all the different integration possibilities we have with GA4 as well. We also have modeled conversions. This is super helpful when you're doing anything with attribution marketing, which as a marketer, you're going to definitely care about that because you get to definitely understand the holistic experience of what users are doing between marketing efforts in order to get to that final conversion point. Again, we have those privacy controls, anomaly detection, which is a huge plus for when you see any type of spike in traffic or something that might look odd in your data. And hitting back on the machine learning and artificial intelligence features is the predictive analytics, which is huge for automated insights that you want to get in a quick glance what's happening with your data as well. Obviously, if you have gotten the opportunity yet to see Google Analytics 4, the interface is quite different from what we're used to within Universal Analytics, but don't worry, the data is still there. The big thing I want to note is that within Universal Analytics, you've probably noticed that there's a lot of reports you probably never really got to touch too often. I know for myself, there's a handful that I like to go to all the time when I'm reporting and looking at data. Within GA4, we have a little bit more simplified view within the navigation where there's a lot less reports, although there's a lot more enhanced opportunities where you can build custom reports within the exploration pane. There's also a lot more implementation ease where, again, what Uriah touched on is that it's a lot faster to get those automated events being tracked, such as scroll, clicks, downloads. Those all come by default. So that's a really good opportunity for students as well to see some events being tracked besides just the page view, which you're typically used to within the demo account when you're teaching Universal Analytics for students. So there's a lot of great opportunities within Google Analytics 4 for that as well. Oh, looks like the slide messed up a little bit, but customization galore really focuses on more of how these new features and what the difference is between legacy and Google Analytics 4. So hitting back on that customization is in Universal Analytics, we have custom reports and dashboards, which is a built-in feature within the interface. And then there's obviously the other tool you could use, such as Google Data Studio, which is another product that you could bring in your analytics data and visualize it with other platforms like Google Ads. You could bring it in with a Google Sheet of data. With Google Analytics 4, though, you have that exploration pane, which has the ability to create relatively any report in the platform. As long as you're tracking that data, you could do it all in there. A really great example is that I was trying to replicate a checkout flow for a client recently, and that's not something that comes default like what I'm used to with Universal Analytics, but I was able to build that out pretty seamlessly and easily within the Google Analytics 4 exploration pane. So really good opportunity to have some different projects with that when you're doing some course material and modules as well. And then going back to the ad hoc reporting and flexibilities, that's really the big point. You could really build any report. It's just going to take a little bit of learning curve to get there, but that's definitely a huge plus with the ad hoc reporting tool within the interface. And another note is that if you are doing anything using Data Studio, you could still pull in Google Analytics 4 data as well, which is a huge plus. There's a lot of integrations available. Again, if you're doing a lot with teaching different other Google marketing product suites as well, like Google Ads, if you have a class on that, if you're doing anything with Merchant Center, BigQuery even, there's a lot of these integrations and even more constantly being added. That is a huge plus. Instead of having your data all siloed in these various platforms, you're now able to integrate them within GA4 to have it all in one place, which again is all hitting back on that holistic user experience and analysis reporting that you're able to do. There's also native integration with Google BigQuery, which we did not see with Universal Analytics. So that's a huge plus. So now when you have that connection to BigQuery, you could do enhanced deep dives and reporting and analysis within that tool as well, which is a huge plus. Also, there's the ability for data import. That's something that within Universal Analytics was still existing, but now with GA4, we see that as well. So it's nice to see that carry over. That lets you bring over other forms of data that's besides the product links that we see by default. So for example, if you need to transfer in data from another marketing platform that isn't already native integration, that's possible. And then hitting back on the integration with Data Studio as well. So if you need to do any additional data visualization or projects using that as well. Attribution modeling, a marketer's dream come true. I personally love attribution marketing. Within the Universal Analytics, I loved using it with the multi-channel funnels reports. If you ever taught anything using that set of reports, we now get that within the advertising pane within Google Analytics 4, which is a huge plus. I was so excited when I saw that get added. But this is really great, especially if you're doing anything teaching students about the different attribution models, such as first click, last click, linear. There's a lot of different types of modeling that you could be doing. And usually that's communicated within the marketing team that you might be doing if you're working in the setting of already within a company. But this actually has more attribution models to choose from the Universal Analytics, which is a huge plus. Going back to that event model provides the really enhanced conversion metrics we're able to track. So anything from purchase, a download, form submission, really anything that's a main conversion point, This is vital when we're trying to understand what marketing efforts further translate to getting more conversions or what can get us conversions faster. This is really important when you're teaching digital marketing courses or within the industry already. So definitely love the set of reports if you're able to hit on that during your course or training as well. Great. Please remember that you could put in any questions that you might have in the chat as well. We'll be able to hit on those too. So that's an awesome opportunity. I'm going to be hitting now on business adoption. So this really hits on, for your students, either opportunities, what you could be educating them on, how you could see organizations adopting it for why it's a big plus to them, these different features. And also this is a good opportunity to maybe think about if you were to do some type of mini project with them or some type of hands-on experience with an organization, how else you could be using GA4. So perfect opportunities. One of the big things I personally think about GA4 is the integrations. I did mention that I feel like there's always some new ones getting added. Merchant Center, which is connected to Google Shopping, is actually a more recent one. That is a huge plus, especially if there's any type of like school store that you might have or small business that might be selling on there. That's a great integration to have that we didn't have with Universal Analytics. But again, hitting on that, having no more siloed data, that's a huge plus. I have a lot of different peers and colleagues that work more on the marketing side that always say, oh, I hate how my data is always in just one platform. How do I bring it together? This is a perfect opportunity to have that all take place with the product linking features and then getting a really holistic experience of, instead of just setting up an ad campaign and seeing how did a user actually convert by maybe clicking or making the purchase, you get to see what else they're doing within that web experience or app experience as well, which is a huge plus. This is great for improving advertising strategies since you have all that data in one hub as well. And also allows for more deep dives for how to understand your campaign strategy a little bit better. So that's a huge plus. The enhanced analysis alone is also a really great feature. The reporting within Universal Analytics is fine. I think with Google Analytics 4, it's definitely a lot better, especially for students. It's going to be really important to know how to visualize data. And the fact that we could build out these reports within the interface is a huge plus, especially because it's all in one hub versus having to use all these different platforms like in the past you had to do. I believe the anomaly detection is a huge plus, especially for businesses that might see a major spike out of nowhere. Maybe it could be with revenue coming in, or it could even be from a campaign effort that got a ton of traction. The automated insights and machine learning capabilities is also great. We have a lot of clients at Bounteous that rave over it because it's really great to have those automated insights pop up in a glance to see how that could dive into more analysis on your students' end as well. And then again, just the custom reports you could build out. You could really build out anything within the platform, which is a huge plus. And that could be, again, just great learning opportunities for students to see how you could visualize the data in different ways to build different types of reports to use for different case scenarios as well. I see there was a question that came in related to transparency behind automated insights or analytics. Any resources that would be appreciated. A lot of them that I've seen pop up in terms of automated insights is just based off the data. I see a lot of them come in more behind the marketing. So once you have the data come in, they essentially just pop up on the dashboard in various sections of the interface. So you'll see those usually just be based off the data. If you're using anything like the Google Merchant Store demo account for GA4, a lot of that's related to e-com and their different marketing efforts that have data behind it. But it helps you dive deeper into the reports when you get those insights. So a lot of organizations like to use that just to make it faster than having to dive deep into their own reports themselves. It just pops up typically on the main home screen, which is a huge plus. So more so for the fact if you're doing students with like an internship or using it for a learning opportunity with an organization's Google Analytics data, that's a huge plus for them to understand what the data means and get a little heads up on what the analysis is going to lead into. So hopefully that helped your question. Oh, how they're calculated. I believe it's just for the interface. Uriah, you could always add in here as well if you know that, or we could always do it in the ending as well with the Q&A, but we could take that into account, that question. So thank you. But another item is the customization. This is a really big plus. So I kind of hit on it before, but within Universal Analytics, you have all those default reports that you don't always use or leverage. So it kind of takes up a lot of space on the screen. I like that within Google Analytics 4, there's actually a portion that you're able to customize your reporting navigation interface. That's called the library feature, which is really nice because you could organize it the way you want to. We also touched on it, but Google Analytics 4, upon implementation and setup, does come with a handful of automated events, such as page view, session start, a download, scroll. If there's YouTube videos, it auto tracks that as well. When before with Universal, you usually have to use a tag manager tool, such as Google Tag Manager. There's some others as well, but that's a really good way to get a head start on some different event data that's being tracked. And then this could also lead into other portions of courses that you could touch on related to Google Tag Manager to teach how to track different other site events, whether it's a purchase, button clicks, form submissions, and more. So that's a great opportunity for enhanced teaching as well. There's also custom reporting capabilities, again, with the exploration pane with those different dashboards that before you're more limited to the screen view as well. There's the BigQuery integration for advanced analysis, again, which is perfect if you're doing any courses with big data or anything with like SQL coding. And then it's also that ability to fix your interface the way it's viewed. So that's a huge plus that we didn't have over Universal Analytics. Hitting back on the improved attribution modeling, I know when I was back in college, my digital marketing course did hone in more on the marketing than the analytics. So I think that's why I wanted to hit on this a little bit more. But it's a great way to understand how to get more conversions or how to get that conversion path shorter to get conversions faster, which is a great way to hit on that, how it's integrated with Google Ads, or if you're doing other marketing efforts or mini campaigns for a course project or something, to understand that attribution modeling and how it's so essential for when you're planning different campaign efforts, especially the deep dive within the user journey and how it all flows together as well. If the different touch points within a campaign is the big plus over that as well. Now, if you're looking to level up, I just hit on this too, but Google Tag Manager. If I was to teach GA4, I definitely try to mention at least Google Tag Manager, just because it's a seamless integration. Again, you do get some of those default events that I mentioned, which is a small handful, but actually getting to level up your students to know Google Tag Manager is a great way. The reason I usually suggest this is because Google Tag Manager is the best way to, if you're using an organization or doing some type of project with a small business for your students, Google Tag Manager is one of the best ways to implement Google Analytics 4 between those events and actually getting the tracking to initially start. So definitely a helpful way to start teaching it as well. This also gets you control over marketing pixels and third-party platforms that are going to be integrating with your site. So if you're doing anything with Google Ads or doing anything with Google Ads conversions or remarketing, doing anything with Facebook Pixel for a class in that relation, that's a good way to deploy all those tags and code for Google Tag Manager as well. And this is, again, just a great way to enhance your analytic skill set within data collection and tracking. Most organizations you will see will ask if you have Google Analytics experience and Google Tag Manager oftentimes. So that's why it's a huge plus for your students to know that information. I thought this was a super helpful slide, especially if you are coming from academics and are a professor. But these are some different ways that your students can level up within digital analytics if they're having it maybe be a college program, a single class even. But having some type of recommendation around intro coding classes using HTML, JavaScript is a huge plus to recommend students, just because within Google Analytics and Tag Manager, you're often going to need to know a little bit of code experience for some of those enhanced tagging that you might do on site events. Bonus points is SQL code because you can use that within BigQuery if you're having any courses on that or further capstone projects even. And just hands-on learning experience is the best way to learn. The more experience you get within the interface, besides just the demo account at times, is the best way you're going to be able to learn and apply what you're learning in class to a real-world scenario. So that's perfect. And then again, other opportunities is using tools that integrate really nice with Google Analytics 4 is Google Data Studio, Google Ads, Search Console for organic traffic, and many more. So hopefully you take this into consideration if you're designing a digital analytics program for undergrad or master's, or even for your course that you're teaching as well, for how to integrate more of these tips and skill sets for your students to learn to just level up within their career field. And I'm going to pass it over to Nathan in that case. So that's perfect.
Sabrina, I had a quick question for you about BigQuery. So we used a paid version when I was at Cleveland Clinic. Is there a free version of BigQuery that students have access to, or is everything paid?
There is a demo account that you can use that has a wide mass of data sets already built in. But within Google Analytics 4, that's a huge plus because you have that native integration to connect your Google Analytics 4 data into BigQuery to start streamlining that data in there. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head what the cost might be associated, just because if it's, for example, a small business, I don't think there's a large cost at all. But let's say you had really mass amounts of data coming in, say you're a really national organization, it would have a cost in that case. Uriah, do you have anything to add to that for BigQuery?
Yeah, in terms of students using BigQuery for practice and stuff like that, you can usually Google usually gives out a free account. I think it's usually they always push the free credit, so that usually you can start with that, and you can actually do a lot of stuff with that. So you just have to sign up for a Google account and for BigQuery. I think it's the cloud platform, and then you'll be able to work with that.
And then my other question is, some of the scariest things when you're an instructor and you're showing or demoing a new tool are the things that are no longer there that you used to talk about, and you might mention it and then you can't find it. And so, for example, bounce rate. Can you talk a little about how that's going away, how that's often taught, and just like a little about, okay, if you were going to teach, like what would you use instead of that, and why it's not there?
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
So I guess I'll take on bounce rate. So bounce rate is something that a lot of people, as you said, focus on. In teaching moving forward, the idea is about session start and events. So everything's event based. So bounce rate was kind of like, bounce rate wouldn't apply if you were looking at an app or a single page application. Bounce rate would not do very well. So, and the idea now is about engagement. What is happening? What are they clicking on? What are they doing? So the idea around sort of pushing bounce rates to the side is the idea about engagement. There's actually an engagement event. So it starts. There's a session start, and you can follow all the events within that. So it's on engagement.
I think the specific term is engagement rate.
It's
engagement rate, I believe, is what it comes in. And it's based off if a user's been on, I think, more than 10 seconds, I want to say, and at least one page that they view. So that's the metric specifically for that. I will add Google Analytics 4 is constantly evolving. I feel like every month there's something new. So that's what it is currently. I could definitely foresee in the future down the road that there could be more enhancements to some of these metrics that we currently have available to us in relation to how that could enhance bounce rate, because I know that's a top favorite that everybody likes to teach.
Right. And then the other,
so
there was one other thing that I come across was in terms of engagement. It's especially with GA4, it's the idea that what it allows you to do also, GA4 allows you to really look at the user that you're trying to engage. So, for example, there's an example where you have a shop that was based on mothers doing things and they had babies at home and they were doing things, and they were trying to figure out what their engagement rate was. So the mothers were spending up to 5 hours. It took them 5 hours to do a purchase. So if their engagement rate was based around 10 seconds, well, that mother would fall outside of that box. So engagement rate with GA4, you're able to really play with it and really customize it to your specific use case. So that's something that's really important to look at, especially in GA4.
And I think it's a great way to wean us off of a metric that we were I think we are kind of addicted to it, because it's like a nice thing that was super prominent within Universal Analytics. And now we can kind of think about, well, that it doesn't really tell us much, right? It's like, did they get to another page on our website? But was that the goal? Did we want them to have to keep going deeper in our website, or did we want to provide that information on one page? With engagement rate, I love that you can tailor it, and then you can say, okay, what is meaningful engagement with our website? Instead of there being a blanket, did they bounce? Did they not bounce? And then I had so many clients that said, well, what about this bounce rate? It's so bad. It's 80%. But I'm like, but they're doing like we're expecting that they're getting the information and we're providing a good experience. And so it's very interesting, but that's one of the things that I found when I started getting into it is like, okay, something I talk about is no longer there. And so just getting comfortable with those new features, as well as getting comfortable letting go of some of the old features that are gone. So this is the part where I give you a whole ton of resources for you as instructors or trainers to use in your classrooms. And so Stu-Ken, if you can put up the download link for this real survivor guide. So it's like a document for you. So they'll share the survival guide with you. It has a ton of information. I'm going to dive into all the aspects of it. So as I do that, Stu-Ken, if you can share that survival guide and put it up in the handouts so everybody has it. As you do that, I will get into what is in that survival guide. So it starts with some of the content we've already talked about today, right? The deadline, the why Google Analytics 4. Okay, so you've already been exposed to that, so you can skip down to the end of the survival guide where we get into a transitioning checklist for trainers and instructors, as well as a curated instructor resource list, which some of you read my mind and already jumped ahead. There's some resources that you were talking about, like demo accounts, as well as training certificates for specifically GA4. So substitutes for what we've been using for Universal Analytics for this new version of Google Analytics. So you can just do a one-to-one replacement, take the demo account you used to use, instead use this new GA4 demo account. So within handouts, if you click in the handouts tab on your right-hand side, you can now download this guide. I see a lot of you have found your way over there. And so let me give you a sneak peek of those two later sections. The first is the checklist for all instructors. And so again, an important reminder, before July 1st of 2023, we need to update our courses. What are the 4 things that I think every instructor and trainer should do? First, understand and try Google Analytics 4. So you're not just talking about it conceptually, but you've actually been in it and you understand it. Hopefully you understand it better from this webinar and you can talk about the why behind GA4, but also get into the demo account and try out using it so you can talk about, the how and the what of GA4. Next, you should audit all your courses. Look for any mentions of Google Analytics, because anywhere you mention Google Analytics, you should be talking about, instead of Google Analytics, Google Analytics 4. And you should update the surrounding context around those mentions of Google Analytics to the functions and the capabilities of Google Analytics 4. So that's very important. If you have no mentions of Google Analytics, this is perfect. You're actually in a better boat than us who are familiar with the old version of Google Analytics. You can start fresh and integrate into your program GA4 content, which will be very timely and very relevant to your students. Next, finding supporting courseware and materials. Find courseware that you can use that mentions Google Analytics 4 and has relevant, up-to-date information for Google Analytics 4. Things to consider: any blog posts that you're sharing with your students, any textbooks that you're using, videos that you're sharing, as well as activities. If they're showing the interface of Universal Analytics, it's going to be obsolete, and that student's going to be learning an interface that no longer is something that they will ever use in their career. So we want to make sure that we update our materials and are using materials that have references to GA4 and walkthroughs of GA4. Finally, let's create some lesson plans and engaging activities for our students, as well as assignments and projects around GA4. Sabrina mentioned it, and she said it best, that hands-on experience is the best way for people to learn a new tool. So I'm very, very passionate about giving students hands-on experience. And so I want to make sure that if we're doing these updates, we're not just talking about GA4, but you also create at least one assignment where they can get into platform, since they can, for free. And so that's really important, I think, for students. Next, I have the list of resources for GA4. This is a curated So curated by me, but I've gone through a lot of resources and I've pulled out the ones that are valuable, threw away the junk and just put in the things that I think are most valuable as I update my courseware as well as my courses. And so here you can see links to various sources. You can't click on the links in this webinar, but in that download, you can click through on each one of these links. So what do we have here? We have 2 new demo accounts, which is cool. You have a demo account for Flood It, which is a real mobile app run by Google. And you can see what that demo account in analytics looks like for a mobile application. We have a demo account for, again, the Google Merchandise website, which you're probably familiar with, the Google Merchandise store. The demo account for Universal Analytics. There is a new GA4 version of that account, so you can look at website analytics within GA4. And as we mentioned before, GA4 can be used for websites, for mobile apps, can be used for both. And so that's a great way to expose your students to those 2 applications. Courseware. So this is my courseware, digital marketing analytics, strategic decision making. I have GA4 resources and content that I'm going to talk through within there. Specifically, I have tutorial videos. And so in chapter 11, section 4, there is a walkthrough video where I walk through the interface of the demo account and also instruct students or you on how to access the demo account, as well as then navigate into GA4 and use GA4 assignments. There is an assignment currently in the most recent version of my textbook in chapter 11 that is for the Flood It mobile app. And this assignment actually has been in the textbook for the past year. And so you may have already used it, but it's a great way to expose your students to GA4. Coming in early 2023, I'm updating chapters 8 and 13 to remove every mention of Google Analytics and also the Google Analytics assignments. So if you want them, download them now because they're going to be gone and they're all going to be replaced with GA4 assignments. And so that kind of is helping with the transition, right? You have those familiar assignments in chapters 8 and chapters 13, but then you can start to push yourself with chapter 11 where you're getting into GA4, and then ultimately in 2023, everything will be GA4. So that's the current state of things in terms of assignments. Lesson plans, again, we have lesson plans for mobile app analytics with GA4, and we will have them for website analytics and paid analytics with GA4. Blog posts, these come from a variety of different organizations. Bounteous has a great blog post on GA4, so does Search Engine Journal, and Suken has a landing page where we're aggregating all our data about and information about GA4, including the recording of this webinar. Certifications, this was a question that came up in the chat. Certifications are something that we're used to using, right? Within Analytics Academy, we would send students to get a certification in Google Analytics fundamentals. As of right now, that Academy is still for UA, the Universal Analytics, the old version of Google Analytics, but I found 3 certifications from Google, from Skills Shop, where they're providing certifications for GA4. And so here are 3 links to the 3 different certifications that they have. I recommend using those, replacing the certification for that old interface because it's no longer relevant. So my hunch is that Google will sunset the Analytics Academy old Universal Analytics trainings and replace them with something that looks like these new certifications. But these new certifications you can access right now. Other resources, we have a variety of other things, a podcast, support article from Google, as well as a video that I thought was really helpful. And so that is a quick high-level summary of the survival guide for you. So hopefully that's helpful. I curated this list and I figured I would share it with all of you. And it's very specific to what we're doing, training, teaching, and getting students hands-on experience with Google Analytics 4. There's a link at the bottom of these slides if you're watching this recording after the fact, where you can go to the landing page from Stuken, and from that landing page you can download the instructor survival guide that we just shared in real time with everybody here. So again, that survival guide is under handouts in that handout tab, and you can download this guide, which has more than what I just showed you, but those are the main things that I wanted to provide to you. So beyond that, I just wanted to talk at a high level with the textbook that I wrote in partnership with Stu Kent. There's Google Analytics 4 materials, right? So I'm doing all the work of updating from Google Analytics to GA4. So feel free to piggyback on what I'm doing and use that. So here we're sharing a link to that courseware. It's free for any instructors. So you can just request free instructor access. If you already don't have free instructor access, I encourage you go into the courseware, look for a specific assignment you want, see if you like it. Definitely do that and use the assignment. But if it makes sense and you're having trouble updating your courses, you can use the entire textbook as well to facilitate this migration to GA4. I use my courseware for analytics heavy courses, but also for strategy and higher level strategic and management courses because analytics is so important to that decision making. Just quick note, some new things that have been added to the textbook based on a popular demand from people. We added a question test bank. So we have a question bank that you can use. We also have more than five new data sets within the textbook, which were requested, as well as more course outlines. So if you're teaching a abbreviated course, like an 8-week course or a 6-week course, we have course outlines for you. And then everything else is still in there. It's all kept up to date. And then, as I mentioned before, I'm integrating early 2023, everything GA4, everything Google Analytics will go away, and everything will be GA4. For right now, you're getting a soft, incremental move to GA4 in Chapter 11 having all that GA4 content. So with that said, let's take some time quickly to take any questions. Here's a link, of course, to get to the textbook and all those resources if you need them, but those links are in the survival guide as well. So feel free just to click through in the survival guide. So are there any questions that people have? And then Uriah and Sabrina, if you saw anything come through, feel free to chime in as well.
Yeah, the only comment, I think Sabrina touched on it earlier, was just with GA4 and in teaching GA4, you really have to understand that it's not a complete product yet, so it's going to keep updating. So one day the screen you're going to show is going to be somewhere else, or they might change the interface around or the UI. So that's something always to be aware of as you teach your students, because you get a student come back and say, well, I looked at it, it's not the same thing. So that's something that you got to be really aware of over the next while until they finally sort of pretty much finalize things. But things move around a lot and things disappear or get renamed.
There's a email you could get from Google directly, and their social accounts are usually what provide those updates of what the new features are. There's also a lot of people in the analytics digital marketing industry that are bloggers essentially, and they have information too, which is super helpful to keep up to date with the newest updates. So it's across the board for all the product suite, the entire product suite. So that's something to keep in mind as well. If you're even teaching for Google Ads, Data Studio, they provide updates for everything, which is super helpful when you're in academics because there's constant changes that could be happening.
Then Sabrina, I know that you mentioned this in the chat, but can you talk about the possible integration with Google Optimize?
Yeah, so with Google Optimize currently, you are able, once you're setting up those A/B tests or various tests that you might be running, you could pass in those Google Analytics for conversions that you have set up. So once those are set up and you have data in your account, you could start doing that. I believe it's going to be a potential evolution where, similar to Universal Analytics, we actually have those optimized test reports within the interface too. So that's something that I believe is going to be a future evolution of GA4 of that integration. But you are able to pass in those GA4 conversions for active tests that you might be running now, which is a plus if you're doing any type of testing currently or teaching a class that hits on that.
Yeah, and also I want to add something quickly on Nathan. The other thing that professors need to look at a lot is in terms of property and stream or measurement ID. That's one of the big differences between the two platforms, because everyone's always talking about properties in UA. Now it's going to be it's a stream and then a measurement ID. So that's something that's to be paid attention to. So you're going to be speaking in the language of streams and measurement ID as opposed to property.
Perfect. And then Kevin had a question around the courseware, if I have anything currently in there around universal analytics. Yeah, there's 2 assignments in there, one in chapter 8 and one in chapter 13 that use universal analytics currently. I'm not going to pull those from the courseware right now, just because I know some people have planned their lessons around, but they will be removed in early 2023 and replaced with GA4 assignments. And so the textbook will remain the same. Those assignments will evolve. The text within the chapters will evolve, because it talks about the different metrics and function of analytics for websites, as well as analytics for paid media. But the nice thing is you won't have to worry about it. I'll take care of all of that. And then you'll just need to make sure that when you're planning those lessons, that you're looking at that updated lesson plan and those updated assignments. You can get free access to DMA, the Digital Marketing Analytics Strategic Decision Making, if you're an instructor. So just go to that landing page or just Google search Digital Marketing Analytics textbook, and you can request free instructor access. You can access everything. So you can get all the assignments, you can get everything. And then if you want to use it for your class, great. If not, you can use those resources. Reach out to me. Let me know if you have any questions or ideas for how to make it even better. It's been in market now for 2 years, and so I've refined it with time, but I'm always open to suggestions of things that your students need or opportunities to enhance the content and make it even better. So let me know what you think, and I just really hope it's a valuable resource for all of you. So with that said, I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're here live, whether you're watching this recording after the fact. This is a super important topic. And so the content around this topic is going to be injected into that landing page that I shared with you earlier, stukent.com/all/GA4. That landing page is going to have all the information that we create, including this recording, around Google Analytics 4, as well as links to all those resources, including this survival guide that we shared with you today. I hope that we'll have other opportunities to meet with Uriah and Sabrina and for them to share their expertise. I think it's so important for us to be connected with the industry so we can be on that cutting edge as they're forced to be, as they have clients who are migrating and using these new platforms and these new interfaces. So I just wanted to give a big thank you to Bounteous, big thank you to Uriah and Sabrina. Thank you so much for helping us. Thank you for being reaching back to education and helping pull us along with industry. And I look forward to working with you in the future. Very valuable. And to everybody, we'll catch you in the next one. Thank you so much, and keep us in the loop as you need new resources. We're here to help. Looking forward to it.